Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and very good evening to all of you. My name is Acamar bin Hamzah, number metric 269773. I will discuss about topic 6 is the population growth and economic development, cause and consequence, and the controversies. For this 6.1, the basic issue, population growth and the quality of life. In 2009, the world population was estimated to be 6.8 billion people. Projection by the United Nations placed the figure at more than 9.2 billion by the year 2050. Another widely cited projection is higher at 9.5 billion. The overwhelming majority of the population will inhabit the developing world. What will be the economic and social implication for development if such projections are realized? Is this scenario inevitable, or will it depend the success or failure of the development effort? So every year, more than 75 million people are added to the world. Almost of this net population cause 97% in developing of population growth. So there's several major issues relating this basic question about the population growth. So the first question is, will developing countries be capable of improving the level of living for their people with the current and anticipated level of population? What extent does rapid population increase make it more to provide essential service, social service, including housing, transport, sanitation, and security? How will the developing countries be able to cope with the vast increase in their labor force over the coming decade? Will employment opportunities be plentiful, or will unemployment level soar? What are implications of higher population growth rates among the world poor for their chance of overcoming the human misery of absolute poverty? Will world food supply and its distribution be sufficient not only to meet the anticipated population increase in the coming decade, but also to improve nutritional level to the point where all humans can have adequate diet? And then the next issue is, will developing countries be able to extend the coverage and improve the quality of the health and educational system so that everyone can have access to adequate health care and a basic education? Number 5, is there a relationship between poverty and family size? And then is the inexorable pursuit of increasing affluence among the rich more detrimental to the global environment and the rising living? So this is some basic issue about the population growth. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. My name is Aswanie binti Muhammad Azlam, my matrix number 261723. Now I will continue to present 6.2 population growth, past, present and future. First, world population growth throughout history. Based on 6.1, table 6.1, the world is approaching the population milestone of 7 billion people. People first started to cultivate food through agriculture some 12,000 years ago. The estimated world population was no more than 5 billion. 2,000 years ago, the world population had grown to nearly 2,050 million, less than a fifth of the population of China today. From year 1 on our calendar to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution around 1750, it tripled to 728 million people, less than 3/4 of the total number living in India today. The Earth's human population more than doubled again, bringing the total figure to around 5.3 billion in 1915 until 1990. Which is the world entered the 21st century with over 6 billion people. As you all can see, the figure 6.1 shows how rapidly the total population growth after 1950 in comparison with the 2 centuries before that. It vividly depicts the extent of population growth, the majority of which has occurred in developing countries, both in terms of percentage of total population and absolute numbers. Finally, it provides projections to 2050, when the world population is expected to reach 9.2 billion. Move from absolute numbers to percentage growth rates. For almost the whole of human existence on Earth until approximately 300 years ago, the population grew at an annual rate not much greater than 0, which is 0.00% or 20 per million. Naturally, this overall rate was not steady. There were many ups and downs as a result of natural catastrophes and variations in growth rates among regions. As you all can see, by the 1915, the rate had again accelerated, tripling to about 1.0% per year. It continued to accelerate until around 1970, when it peaked at 2.35%. The rate of population change, whether up and down, had been strongly influenced by the combined effects of famine, disease, malnutrition, plague, and war, which is that will result in high and fluctuating death rates. This is the reason for the sudden change in overall population trends is that for almost all of recorded. Such conditions came increasingly under technological and economic control in the 20th century, where it causes human mortality. The death rate is now lower than at any other point in human existence. It is because of the rapid technological advance in modern medicines and the spread of modern sanitation measures throughout the world, particularly within the past half century, that has resulted in the unprecedented increase in world population growth, especially in developing countries. In short, today's population growth occurs because of the rapid transition from a long historical era where high birth and death rates have declined sharply, but especially in developing countries, declining more slowly. That's all for me. Now I will pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. My name is Syaza binti Zaini, 262980. Okay, today I will continue about the structure of the world population. The world population is very unevenly distributed by geographic region, fertility and mortality levels, and also age structure. For the geographic region, more than 3/4 of the world population live in developing countries, with just 1 in every 4 people living in a developed country. In the developing world, between India and Europe, we can see that India have the overgrowing population in large size compared to the Europe, while for China is bordered on the north and west by a thin strip of land that represents Russia. In contrast to Canada, Mexico looms large, a stunning reversal of conventional map. Even the Caribbean islands together are larger than Canada. Bangladesh appeared to be larger than Germany and France combined, despite being smaller than the state of Wisconsin. Nigeria's popularity in Africa is notable. Indonesia is a country that receives very little international attention, dwarf its neighbor Australia, while appearing nearly as large as the United States. Next, we will talk about fertility and mortality trends. The rate of population increase is quantitatively measured as the percentage yearly net relative increase or decrease, in which case it is negative, in population size due to natural increase and net international migration. Natural increase simply measures the excess of birth over that, or in more technical terms, the difference between fertility and mortality. Net international migration was an extremely important source of population increase in North America, Australia, and New Zealand, and corresponding relative decrease in Western Europe. Population increases in developing countries, therefore depend almost entirely on the difference between their crude birth rate and death rates. Most developing nations have birth rate ranging from 15 to 40 per thousand. By contrast, in almost all developed countries, the rate is less than 15 per thousand. By modern vaccination campaign, we can see the result over the last 3 decades. Death rates in parts of Asia and Latin America have dropped by up to 50%, and death rates in most of Africa and the Middle East have dropped by more than 30%. Nonetheless, the average life expectancy in developing countries is around 12 years longer. Table 6.3 shows the fertility rate for selected countries in 1970 and 2009. We can see all the countries show the decreased trend, which we can see in 1970 show the highest rate compared to the 2009. Okay, the age structure and dependency burdens. Use dependency ratio is the proportion of young people under age 15 to the working population age 16 to 64 in the country. Population growth, the phenomenon whereby population continue to increase even after a fall in birth rate because the large existing useful population expand the population base of potential parents. In the developing world, the population is relatively young. 30% of the population in developed countries are children aged 15 years and below, but only 17% of developed nations. The workforce age group 15 to 64 contribute to approximately 68% of the total population in North America. Just about 20% of the population must be existed by this workforce as a young dependent. About 17% of the population in Japan and at least 9 European countries is over 65. The key challenges in more developed countries are linked to low population growth and elderly people over age 65. In general, the more rapid the population growth rate, the greater the proportion of dependent children in the total population, and the more difficult it is for people who are working to support those who are not. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Amelia binti Nosham. My metric number is 272294. Today I will present about the hidden momentum of population growth. So firstly, what is the population of momentum? For any population changes over time, its size and compositions are driven by levels and trends of fertility, mortality, and migrations. Additionally, a fourth element, the age structure of the population, also has an important impact on population trends, including for trajectories of growth or decline. Thanks to a phenomenon known as population momentum, the youthful populations with constant level of mortality and a net migration 1 of 0 continues to grow even when fertility remains constant at the replacement level. In this situation, relatively youthful age structure promotes a more rapid growth because the birth being produced by a relatively large number of humans of reproductive age outnumber the deaths occurring in the total population, even if the fertility of the average woman stands at replacement level. Population momentum can be conducive to positive or negative population growth. A relatively older age structure contributes to a slower rate of growth or in more extreme cases to population decline. So next, the term of the hidden population growth. It refers to phenomenon of continuous increase in the population of a country. There are two reasons behind this phenomena. First, a country cannot expect a full fall in birth rates overnight. Second, the population pyramids of LDC shows a wide base of the youthful population and it goes on decreasing with the rise in age of populations. The phenomenon is very important in depicting future population trends in different developing nations. Is it able to predict the likely percentage of the population that will belong to each age structure? For example, the youth, working adults, and old age, the number of potential parents, and the likely policies that can be adopted to manage the change in the population structure. So next, this is the example of population pyramids. So from this pyramid, we get each pyramid rises by 5-year age interval for both males and females, with the total number in each age cohort measured on the horizontal axis. The left and middle panel shows population pyramids for developed and developing countries, respectively. So, expressed in millions of people rather than percentage, the figure clearly reveals that the most future population growth will take place in the developing world. For developed countries, in the contemporary period, the population in middle cohorts is typically greater than that of young cohorts. This is partly, but certainly not exclusively, viewed as transitional feature of a period in which women have been delaying birth until later in the life. So, from the Ethiopia pyramids expressed as share of the populations, young people greatly outnumber their parents. When their generation reaches adulthood, the number of potential parents will inevitably be much larger than at present. So it follows that even these new parents have enough children to replace themselves. The fact that the total number of couples having 2 children is much greater than the number of couples who previously had more children means that the total populations will still increase substantially before leveling off. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Alright, we go to the 6.3 is the demographic transition. The process by which fertility rate eventually decline. The replacement level has been portrayed by the famous concept in economic demography called the demographic transition. The demographic transition attempt to explain why all contemporary developed nations have more or less passed through the same 3 stages of modern population history. So in the figure 6.5, we can see the demographic transition in the Western Europe, and then they have a 3 stage in the demographic transition is the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. We see in the stage 1, before the economic modernization, this country for centuries has stable or very slow growing population as a result of a combination of high birth rate and almost equally high death rates. And then we go to the stage 2, began when the modernization associated with better public health method, healthier diet, high income, and other improvement. However, the decline in death rate was not immediately accompanied by the decline in fertility. As a result, the growing divergence between high birth rate and falling death rate led to sharp increase in population growth compared to past century. Thus marked the beginning of the demographic transition. And then we go to the stage 3, when the forces and influences of modernization and development caused the beginning of decline in fertility. Eventually, falling birth rate converts with lower death rates, leaving little or no population growth. So that is the demographic transition for Western Europe. And we go to the figure 6.6, we see the demographic transition in the developing country. Birth rate in many developing countries today are considerably higher than they were in pre-industrial Western Europe. Women tend to marry early age. As a result, There are both family for given population size and more year in which to have children. So, in the developing country, they have same stage, but they have different case. They have a case A and have case B. The demographic transition has been characterized by population growth rate well in excess of 2.0% per annum in most developing countries. We can distinguish between two broad classes of developing countries. Case A, modern method of debt control combined with rapid and widely distributed rise in level of living have resulted in death rate falling low as 10 per 1,000 and birth rate also fall in rapidly. To level between 12 and 25 per 1,000, the countries including Taiwan, South Korea, Costa Rica, China, Cuba, Chile, and Sri Lanka have thus entered stage 3 of their demographic transition and have experienced rapidly falling rate of overall population growth. And for the case B, after an initial period of rapid decline, death rate have failed to drop further largely because of the persistence of widespread absolutely poverty and low level of living, and more recently because of the AIDS epidemic. Moreover, the continuance of still quite high birth rate. As a result, this low level of living caused overall population growth rate to remain relatively high. So, as we learn, we must they have a question, the important question. Therefore, is this when the under condition are they developing nation likely experience birth rate and a slower expansion of population? To answer this question, we need to ask a prior one. To try to answer this critical question, we turn to a very old and famous classical macroeconomy and demography model, the Malthusian population trap, and the contemporary and highly influential Nicolasical macroeconomic model, and the household theory of fertility. Alright, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Syaza Muhammad. My matric number is 252113. So now we're going to talk about Malthusian population trap. So it's a theory that higher levels of food production as a result of a more advanced agriculture practices contribute to high population levels, which then leads to food storage because that increased population requires land that was previously used to grow crops. So the modern economics has given a name to the Malthusian idea of population extraordinarily forced to live as a subsistence level of income. They have called the low level equilibrium population trap, or simply Malthusian trap. So in 1798, Thomas Malthus published his views on the effect of population on food supply. His theory has two basic principles. The two basic theory principles are the population grows at geometric rate, and the second one is the food production increases at arithmetic rate. So the consequence of these two principles is that eventually population will exceed the capacity of agriculture to support the new equilibrium numbers. Population will rise until limit to growth was reached. Further growth will be limited when preventive checks, postponement of marriage, lowering of fertility rates, increase the cost of food, and so on. And another one is the positive checks. Famine, war, disease will increase the death rate. And now we move to the Malthusian population trap graph. On the vertical axis, the numerical percentage change positive and negative in the two principal variables under consideration: total population and aggregate income. On the horizontal axis are level per capita income. The x-axis shows the level income per capita, and y-axis shows two rates of population growth, total income growth. Per capita income growth is by definition the difference between income growth and population growth. Hence, the vertical difference between these two graphs. So whenever the rate of total income growth is less than the rate of population growth, income per capita is falling, moving to the left along the x-axis. So when these rates are equal, income per capita is unchanging. So in this graph, the total income growth becomes greater as the economy develops and income per capita rises. An economic reason for this positive relation is that the assumption that saving very positively with income per capita, countries with a higher per capita income are assumed to be capable of generating saving rates and thus more investment. And that's all for my part. I pass to my friend.
Good afternoon, to everyone. My name is Cha Changfen, metric number 262349. The part I'm going to present is the criticism of Malthusian theory of population. The Malthusian theory of population has been the subject of great controversy. Firstly, the foremost strong criticism level of Malthus is that his mathematical proposition is not supported by facts and history. These two terms, geometrical and arithmetical, seem to be unrealistic. There is no example in history of countries where population and food supply have increased through geometrical and arithmetical progression respectively. Again, there is no country where population has doubled itself in 25 years. Besides, Professor Malthus has given undue emphasis on the relation between population and food supply. In fact, increase in population should be considered in relation to total wealth rather than food supply. Professor Seligman argued that the problem of population is not one of the mere size but of efficient production and equitable distribution. On the other hand, according to some critics, Malthusian theory is only pessimistic. Thus, it gives a gloomy picture and threatens the people with misery, poverty, epidemics, wars, drought, and floods. William Godwin has rightly observed that a black and terrible neighbour is always ready to strike the hopes of humanity. The following point is about economic development. Malthus did not realize that economic development can bring down the birth rate. If the people become more educated, then the death rate is reduced through the increase of medical facilities. People think twice before increasing their family because they consider the cost of rearing a child and that of having a car. In this way, the birth rate falls down. The Malthusian theory of population has been inoperative in case of developed countries such as Britain and France. Artificial methods of birth control have been used on extensive scale. That population has become static in these countries. Now efforts are being made to raise the rate of growth of population. Thus, Professor Malthus' version has proved untrue in this country. The Malthusian theory was based on the assumption that the law of diminishing returns operate in agriculture. Due to this law, agricultural production fails to keep pace with the growth of population. Malthus could not visualize that by adopting scientific methods, crop production in agriculture can be increased manifold. Moreover, Malthus suggested self-control and lab marriage example as preventive checks. In fact, we cannot expect the people to exercise such control. The use of birth control has become a necessity. Recent progress in surgery has introduced more possibilities of birth control which was never imagined by Malthus. Consequently, positive measures as suggested by Malthus rarely operate. It has been pointed out that some critics that Malthus has neglected the very important aspect such as biological and sociological factors that govern the growth of population. If we consider these factors properly, then the fear of excessive growth of population becomes baseless. That's all from me. Thank you.